You're listening to Mark of the Maker. Hey everybody, I'm Mark Steiner and you're listening to Mark of the Maker, and this is episode 51 of the show, and this one's going to be another interview episode. We always get good comments about interviews, and we try to pick different folks from different parts of the knife world, and this will be someone I think you'll really enjoy. Friend of mine, friend of ours, and a guy who's actually made kind of a, what are we going to call it, a cameo appearance on the show. An incredibly short appearance on Mark of the Maker. We'll get to that in a minute. So let's make sure we have the whole crew with us. We have Mr. Tom Crine.
Hey, guys.
And we have Mr. Sean Kendrick.
Insert the opening to Winter's Wolves by the Sword. Yeah.
Nice. Anything by the sword is a winner.
Always.
And we have Mr. Michael Birch.
Here.
So we have a guest with us this time. I'm going to call him a traditional knife maker, although I think he used to make other stuff along the way, maybe a couple different kinds of things, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But my introduction to him was as a traditional knife maker, a slip joint maker, and that's Mr. Luke Swenson. Thanks, and welcome to Mark the Maker, Luke.
Hey, guys. Good to be here.
Thanks, man. Glad you're here.
Great to have you.
So, Luke, usually when we do this stuff, we kind of go through sort of a history of where you are or whatever, but maybe the best place to start here for anyone who's not familiar with you or with your work is to kind of talk about what you're currently doing, like what kind of knives you make, and just introduce people that way to what you do.
Well, for about the past, I guess maybe 8 years now, I've been making traditional slip joints, multi-blades, and a couple years back, maybe 3 or 4 years now, I started doing the traditional lockbacks as well. It was kind of a strange deal. I had been making fixed blades, and I had been, going to shows and stuff like that. And I think probably if I hadn't gotten into the slip joints, I probably wouldn't even be making knives anymore, to be honest with you.
Yeah. So, Luke, at this point, you live in Idaho, right?
That's correct.
Okay. But you only recently moved to Idaho, right? Sometime in the last few years.
Right. I was starting in 1996, I got on with the fire department in San Antonio, Texas.
Okay.
And I was actually a firefighter in the city for about 23 years and had cancer twice, and just decided that those youngsters could handle that. And my wife and I kind of packed up and everything we owned in a moving truck, including my whole knife shop, and moved 2,000 miles away. The normal thing.
Yeah, right. Completely uproot everything in your life and make a ginormous move. So did you grow up in Texas, or where did you grow up? I did.
I was born in San Antonio and grew up in a small town, just south of there, called Natalia.
Okay.
And that's where I went to high school and all that.
So did you live like in town or in a neighborhood or out in the country a little bit or on a farm? How was your surroundings?
We lived out in the country. We had, my mom and dad had bought the place where I grew up some years before. I'm the youngest of 5.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And there's 16 years between my oldest brother and me.
Well, that's a pretty good spread, man.
Yeah. It was funny. They told my mother she'd never have kids.
So proved them wrong.
That fits them every time.
Yeah. But no, it was a pretty typical, South Texas upbringing. I had great parents. I lost my dad when I was 13. He had pancreatic cancer, and my mom pretty much shouldered the load and got my middle sister and I through school and kind of off doing our own thing,
Yeah.
She finally retired when she was 80 years old.
Oh, geez.
Wow.
Yeah. I was born when she was 43.
Yeah.
And kind of like that, I don't know, I don't want to say unwelcome, but definitely unsuspected surprise.
Yeah.
Were you outdoors a lot as a kid? Did you hunt? Did you was it the regular,
We were not hunters when I was that age. We were outdoors a lot. We did a lot of fishing in the local lake, and we were a few hours from the Texas coast, so my brother and I would try to fish down there whenever we went. But we spent a lot of time outside. I mean, if you showed up inside, Mom would find something for you to do,
Right.
and it wouldn't be something that you really wanted to do.
Now, Luke, in that area, I used to drive through there quite a bit because I worked in Laredo for a while.
Mm-hmm.
That area is pretty dry, isn't it? I mean, did you live on a ranch out there or in the country or what?
No, it was our place was about 1.5 acres, and we didn't. My dad worked. Well, before I was born, he was an aircraft mechanic at what was at the time Kelly Air Force Base.
Okay.
And he retired from there and then went back to work at a place in Hondo. It was another aerospace place, and he was there on and off until he passed when I was 13.
Wow.
But he didn't mind farming us out to his buddies to do the odd ranch job, and we hauled hay every summer and built fence and all that kind of stuff.
Kind of part of the deal. Depending on where you live. That's fact.
So how did you come across knives then? Did you do that at a young age, or was that later in life?
Well, my dad, he was that guy with a pocket knife all the time, and he had a case toothpick, and that was what he'd carry. That pretty much that was kind of like his everyday carry. And he also had a old case, one of the small Stockmans, Micarta, it was, probably paper Micarta handle or something like that. And I always was fascinated by it, so much so that I, picked it up off his dresser and cut myself, got a whooping,
Yeah.
And, but that kind of started it. We all, once we hit a certain age, we all had the Buck 110 on our belts, and I don't think we even really, we used them constantly, but I don't think we really even thought about it as a, it's just everybody did it.
Right.
It's like wearing pants,
Right. And unless you lived under a rock in that part of the world, you knew who Bill Ruppel was. Everybody talked about his, fancy pocket knives and all that.
Really?
Yeah.
So even as a young guy, you had heard his name?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Was that because he was local to you, Luke?
Well, he lived, Pleasanton was about another 30 minutes or 35 minutes south of where I actually grew up. But, you go to the feed store and you'd hear those guys talking, or in the cafe, and they all, oh, so-and-so got a new Bill Ruppel trapper or whatever, and this would have been, I don't know, in the late 80s, you'd started hearing about that.
Yeah.
Huh.
When I started hearing about it,
I've never heard of a maker having sort of a local legacy besides like maybe, Randall knives. People would talk about that on occasion. Be like, yeah, you got one of those Randall knives. I've never heard. That's pretty amazing.
I can tell you that if you are a new maker in Pleasanton, Texas, you will sell knives because they want to get knives before they can't afford them anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
It started down there with a guy named Pat West, and he's the guy that taught Bill how to make knives.
Okay.
And they've got everybody in Atascosa County trained. What a custom knife costs, and so they got it pretty good down there.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's pretty cool. So, did you say Pat West?
Yeah, that's the guy. That's the guy that taught Bill to make knives.
Do you know how the family tree goes back from there? How did Pat learn how to make knives? Do you know?
It's my understanding that he's self-taught. He was self-taught.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that he just stayed out on a ranch, and I guess he wanted something to do. And, when you see Bill, you can ask him. But
Yeah,
that's
that'd
my
be
understanding. Yeah, it's my understanding that he was out on the ranch and just needed something to do, so he knocked these knives apart and started learn how to build them.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, he talks about how he, ground everything by hand on a old square wheel running wide open.
Right.
And that's everything from blade bevels to dovetails on bolsters.
Very cool.
Well,
That's one of the interesting things and one of the things I thought would be fun to talk with Luke about is this, I called it a family tree because that's the way I think about it, that it's what it feels like, right? And I know we have that in other parts of knife making too, but it seems pretty significant in the slip joint world that there's a very tribal handoff thing. You guys know what I'm talking about?
It's like a community where you're passing some knowledge on to someone else who passes that to someone else.
right.
It's like I don't know.
Well, I totally understand. I feel like, Bob Dozier kind of did that for me,
Right.
Yeah, there's very much a mentor, a mentee, whatever you want to say it, type of relationship that creates like that lineage, like you're talking about, or family tree, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, when Bill first started teaching me to make slip joints, he said, "You can come and learn to make slip joints." He said, "And I don't want no money." He said, "But someday somebody's going to ask you, and I want you to do this same thing for them."
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah. So
South
that's kind of the deal.
South Texas, grew up outside, spent a ton of time outside. I think I talked on the show before. I remember being told very clearly by my mom, you're not inside in this summertime.
Right.
out. And so we were outside all the time. And I think I think we've all had that experience where doing stuff with your hands as a young man is a powerful thing, right? It kind of teaches you some things along the way.
For sure.
And I don't know, part of growing up, I guess. So you spent a bunch of time outside. You did a little bit of ranch work here and there, helping out folks with stuff, maybe at the behest of your father, which is how things go. I remember doing some crazy stuff with our farmer neighbor because my dad asked me to. So where did it progress from there? So like you said, knives are kind of just like a thing, right? Just a part of life, a tool like you stick in your pocket every day or on your belt.
Growing up, we all like the old Tarzan movies and the old war movies. Everybody, and the knives and westerns and they'd be fighting the Indians or whatever, and the knives would come out, and that was always a draw to me. If there was a movie that had a lot of knife play in it, I liked it. Or TV show or any of that,
That's cool.
Yeah.
We talked in that Fantasy Knives episode just recently about pop culture being an influence, right? And this is a great example of it. Because I know it certainly was a factor for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we all watched, Rambo, and I saw the movie Rambo, and then I think I ordered that ridiculous survival knife from the infomercial like the next afternoon. I don't even remember how much fence I had to build to pay for that stupid thing. But it was a significant amount.
Yeah.
Yeah, it certainly felt significant, right?
At the time, sure.
I remember it was like $85 or something. It was a lot for a kid. I remember that.
Yeah.
And being so disappointed.
Yeah. My dad had a way with facial expressions, and when I brought it up to him, he looked at me, of course, like I'd lost my mind,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But he was, he would, that kind of thing. He didn't like to buy those. He didn't like to buy toys, but tools or knives or especially books. He'd spend his last dollar on a book for us kids,
Yeah.
And, but I feel like he thought that there could be some kind of teaching with a knife, and so I think that's probably why he agreed.
He going to learn about buying off TV today.
Yeah, that could have very well been
Mark had mentioned
the deal.
that you were into like survival stuff. Is that true? And is that part of it?
You know, and this was later on. You know, when I got out of high school, I did a very, very short stint in the Navy. I went to Great Lakes, and they diagnosed me with a heart murmur, and it was right around the time when Bill Clinton got in and pretty much cut the military in half. So they were letting guys out for just about anything you can think of, and you know, they said, "Oh, show up here and sign this," and okay, now go back and wait. And before I knew it, I was on a plane back home.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so I ended up coming back home, and, you know, I thought, well, I'll go to college. And man, college and it just really didn't work out well. You know, I wasn't a bad student through high school or anything like that. I mean, I did pretty good. I don't know. I was very, very happy to get the opportunity to get on with the fire department, though.
Yeah. What were you trying to go to college for?
I was just basically one of these, you know, I had no clue.
I
had no idea what I was doing. I was, you know, in the process of taking the basic courses that you had to have before you decided what you were going to be when you grew up. You know?
Yeah. Yep. Kind of seemed like the thing to do is to go to college. That
Exactly.
I know a lot of people, that's what happens to them.
Exactly.
Same.
And
I think it's a big mistake. I mean, it's like not everybody's cut out for that, you know, and
Right.
but we push them that way,
mm-hmm.
and it isn't cheap.
Yeah. It's
Not
very,
even then.
yeah, very uncheap.
Ben did the same thing. My middle son Ben, he went for a year, and was like, "This isn't for me." And he's actually here working in the shop now and doing pretty good.
Nice. Yeah. I know so many guys that they have young kids, you know, or they have kids, and like the one guy's son just came up, told his dad, he said, "Dad, I'm not going to go to college." He said, "I want to go to welding school." And I think that, I don't even know what that kid's making right now, but it's good.
A lot more than if you went to college.
Yeah, it's a
lot
fact.
more.
And no debt. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's we had such a cultural thing where it was a norm to go to college, right? Like it became an expectation, like somehow everyone just assumed you would go to college, right? And for a lot of parents, I think it was like a point of pride or success or something, right? Like, oh, my kids are going to go to college, and it meant something to them. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? I get that. I understand how we end up there, but I think there's also like the downside of that is it creates this culture. I think we talked about this with Bob T when he was on. It creates this culture that doing stuff with your hands or doing a trades job or something else is somehow lesser, right? And there was very much a culture for a long time that those were lesser jobs that you did because you couldn't cut it at college or some other horseshit.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I think as a result, it ended up being a situation where, you know, a bunch of people I grew up with probably had no business being in college, right? But because it was what you were supposed to do, they did it. And, you know, they never even considered stuff like being a welder or being a machinist or a bunch of these trades that now we don't have enough of, right? And that's why the guys doing it are making a ton of dough because they're in huge demand.
Well, in the 80s, all schools were geared towards college prep. That's just how it was, you know?
Right.
And I get how we got there because like in the 50s and 60s, it meant something if you went to college, right? Because not everybody did it. So,
yep.
And your parents want the best for you and they lived through that. And like my dad was a bricklayer and contractor and he was like, "Wow, I really want you guys to go to college." So, but now the pendulum's swinging the other way. And I would like to see where we get, and this is what I told my kids, you know, if you know what you want to do and you need college to do it, college makes sense. Go to college. But if you're just going to hang out and have fun, dude, just get an apartment. Costs a lot less.
Yeah.
Fact.
Yeah. I think for lots of people, and maybe this is kind of where Luke was at the time, part of it's not knowing what you want to do, right? And I don't know if that's because, I don't know why that is, right? I mean, I say that because I was someone who always kind of knew what he wanted to do, right? I had a path from a pretty young age, but lots of people don't. And I think that can be a struggle, right? To kind of get your head wrapped around, man, I'm going to do some kind of job for a really, really long time, right? And what exactly is that? Because it feels like a huge commitment, and two, I think a lot of times people just don't know, right? They don't know what to expect or what to think or whatever. I don't know. You had no idea you were coming on a self-help show, did you, Luke?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess I need all the help I can get.
We're sending you to college.
There you go. You're like Sean. Sean's laid out the path for you.
Man, Sean is killing it, man. I fear what would happen if I tried to go back to college.
He's a learned man now, so he's leading from the front.
Before long, we'll have to address him as Sir Sean.
Sir Sean, yes.
Buddy, that should have already been fucking happening.
He has been disenfranchised, people.
Treat me like fucking Rodney Dangerfield up in here.
Yeah. They tell me I wasn't even turning the machine on correctly.
Right.
And
Exactly.
I can't imagine if a real machinist came to my shop, he would probably run out screaming.
No, man, I'm lucky. My main instructor, I tell him some of the goofy shit I do. He's like, hey, as long as it works and gets it done, hell yeah.
Nice.
That's why we get along, buddy.
Yeah.
All right, so you took a swing at the college thing. It wasn't your thing.
Yeah,
Right.
I at the time I was working full time at a auto parts place there, and right around the local area, and I joined up with the volunteer fire department at the behest of a friend of mine, and kind of started getting into some of that stuff, like the search and rescue and the pump ops and that kind of stuff, and the medical, and I really liked it. It was just something that it just kind of dawned on me. Said, I need to try to find a place to do this where it pays, where it pays.
Right.
And so I started going, and I took the entrance exam for the fire department a couple times. Finally got in, and best thing I ever did, best job I ever had. Some of the best friends I've ever had were from the fire department. I still talk to a lot of those guys. They're my brothers. It just gets to be that.
That's cool. I mean, I'm sure it was the second best thing you ever did, because I think you said when you were at college is when you met Miss Kimberly.
Actually, Miss Kimberly and I were high school sweethearts.
Oh, okay. Whew. I was trying to bail you out in case you painted yourself into a corner, man.
Yeah, these high school things never work, right? Except
Except when they do.
Yeah, it'll be 30 years that we've been together this January, and we got married.
Met my wife in high school.
Yeah.
Nice.
I met somebody's wife in high school.
Speaking of wives, it's funny to me that Mark has to have your wife's cell phone number and email address before you can come on the show. What's the deal with that?
Yeah.
That's kind of weird.
Yep.
It's odd. I don't know.
Yep. We were doing the setup the other night, and I said, okay, I'm going to send you a link. Where do you want to send it? And he goes, oh, send it to Kimberly's email. And I said, oh yeah, you have to give it to me. And then I started typing. I'm like, oh no, it's all right. I have it.
Well, I mean, I thought that the whole, asking your wife to dinner at the Blade Show thing was odd enough, but at least they let me go one time. Well,
got to keep things smooth.
It's been said that the only thing wrong with Kimberly is me.
It happens.
And that's pretty true. Hey, she made all this happen. It was her. She orchestrated the getting out of debt and paying this place off and building this place. And we didn't owe anybody a dime when we got here on anything.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And, I'm like, oh, squirrel, let's buy this, but she's really held it to the fire and got us straightened out. So
That's good. It's important, man. It matters.
yeah, that's a fact.
So
That's
I guess how did you get hooked up with Rupel to start doing that again, or to start that?
I made my first knife in like 2003.
Okay.
And it was strictly from looking at the Atlanta Cutlery magazine, because I ordered me a set. I still remember I ordered a set of the Viking throwing axes because I'm a complete idiot, obviously. But there was an ad in there, and it was called "Make the Knife You Carry." So I ordered it, and I had no tools to speak of. I had a Dremel tool, and I went to Harbor Freight and bought a vise and some files. And I shaped this handle and put it on this knife, and, oh, look at this knife I made. And to me at the time, that was making a knife,
Right.
And
right.
I started kind of researching and getting into it, and I got word of Johnny Stout's hammer, the Guadalupe Forge hammer in New Braunfels, Texas. Him and Harvey Dean have put this thing on twice a year for, I don't even know, I would guess 20 years at least.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the first time I shook Bill Rupel's hand. Of course, I knew about him before then, but that's the first time we actually met, and he and I got to talking, and we became friends. He reminds me a lot of my dad. So I think that might have been what was part of it at first, but we get along, and we see things similarly on a lot of different issues. So it seemed pretty natural. And he invited me down and started teaching me to do file work. And, basically the best thing I think that I've learned from Bill, and there's been a million things or more, but if it isn't right, it's wrong, was his doctrine.
Yep.
And he told me, he said, it doesn't matter if you're making a fixed blade hunter or a tactical knife or a lockback or a slip joint or anything. If it isn't right, it's wrong. If you keep that mantra, you'll be able to find success.
Yeah. It's way too easy to find a part and be like, it's okay. It'll be fine. It's
good
not.
Enough. Yeah. Yeah. Right. There is no good enough, basically, is where,
right on.
is where I think
So you started, the first knife that you did was some kind of like a kit kind of thing. Is that what it was?
It was a kit knife.
Okay.
And my second knife, and see, when I first started all this, I thought that I was going to be a forging Bowie maker.
Ah.
And so, I stole my wife's hairdryer, and I made a forge, and I cut a chunk of lawnmower blade, and I forged a knife shaped object out of it. And I mean, it's really hideous. I'll take a picture of it and post it in the group.
Oh yeah, there you go.
I keep it around to, some of those days. I have those days where nothing goes right, and I'll screw up a blade or completely ruin something, and I'll go in there and look at that first knife and think, okay,
right,
okay. You get back in there and do this. You're going to be okay.
Right. Get up on that horse, buddy.
Yeah, it's a lesson. It's not a mistake. It's a lesson.
Yeah. So kit knife stuff, kind of tried to do the forging thing. This is all while you're working at the fire department, right? So this
Correct.
is all kind of hobby on the side.
Exactly. Yeah. Everybody told me that I needed to get a side hustle as a fireman. You need to get a side hustle. So-and-so was a plumber and an exterminator, and somehow I picked the absolute worst one for making money at. But it had me that I was hooked right after that kit knife. That was it. I was hooked. I went to the Hammer Inn, I bought a grinder, and I started, the guys at the hunt and lease, they forgot about me over time and got a guy with a truck like mine that looked like me. It pretty much went, that was what I was doing. I didn't really make knives a couple of hours a day. Every day off, I was out there, trying to make something pointy and sharp,
Right.
Yeah.
It can be all consuming.
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling you, I know at the time my wife must have thought I'd lost my ever-loving mind. I need 600 for a grinder,
Right.
And we're all chuckling because we know that 600 for a grinder is nothing but
Right.
now. But yeah,
When you're starting out,
yeah, sure,
it's everything.
And right, but yeah, it was on. I made knives for. I think I probably made knives for 2 or 3 years, and the very first show I went to was the Blade Show. But fortunately, my wife she's a registered nurse, so I could afford to go to the Blade Show even though I didn't sell any knives. I call it the long, lonely weekend.
Yes.
First time I went to Blade, I didn't sell a knife.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the second very important lesson you can learn as a knife maker.
Yeah.
Now,
all it told me was I just needed to make better knives.
Yeah, it's a good lesson to learn.
Yeah.
It's scary.
That scare is something that it's good to hold on to, something good to remember when you're, I don't know, in this kind of day and age, we kind of need to remember that.
Exactly. It'll keep you humble,
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. I think that all-consuming thing, we've heard that as a theme, I think, in many of our interviews
Mm-hmm.
from makers talking about how once they got started, you know what I mean, they kind of couldn't stop, or it became all they thought about, or, you know what I mean, that kind of stuff. And, maybe the reason we hear it is because, most of the people that we've talked to they're successful knife makers, right? I mean, they're making a real go of it, and it's a real thing. And maybe it's common because it's what drives people, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you talk to my wife 30 years later, it's still all consuming. She's
Right.
not always super happy about that.
Right.
Agreed. Yeah. And that, I kind of jumped off of the timeline there just to kind of give a little background. But yeah, that kind of is when I got kind of interested in outdoor survival and, just basically woodsmanship and skills. I got with, actually joined the survival.com for the Hoodlums forum, Ron Hood, the Woodsmaster, and got into all of that. And
Oh, you're in his neighborhood now.
yeah. Actually, he was a big part in our decision to actually purchase property up in this area.
Does Karen still live out there?
She does. She lives over by Worley now.
Okay.
But yeah, in the same area. Yep. And I cut my teeth selling knives and, taking feedback and, listening to people who had actually used knives. I mean, you get a lot of guys that'll buy a knife from you and skin a deer once a year. But I mean, there were guys that they took my knives to sear class in Norway, in the dead of winter.
Right.
I mean, so I mean, you get that feedback from these guys, and you really. Well, I like to think of it as an evolution of your craft. You kind of go from making things just because they look cool, which I still like to do, but then, this guy's, has says, well, round this corner or do this, and makes it easier on you, and that kind of real time feedback I think was invaluable for me anyway.
That's cool. Your interest into that side of things, did that line up at all? You mentioned search and rescue stuff with your time in the fire department. Were those tied together at all? Like, oh, I'm doing this stuff through work and.
Well, the search and rescue that you would use those types of tools for would be like a wilderness search team or something like that, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
And we use knives in the fire department, and our search and rescue was basically just the structural firefighting side.
Okay.
But a blade can come in very handy in that. Also, you get tangled up in some wire. If you don't, you've got a good knife, you cut right through some wire. So
yeah.
Those were things that we thought about and tried to buy. We tried to come up with the proper gear, to carry with us, because the city, they're not going to outfit you personally for your EDC on the job and that kind of stuff. The fire truck is stocked, But if you don't have it with you at the time you need it, it's kind of pointless.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't really delve into that side of it, like the rescue tools and that kind of stuff. I kind of just, my knife making kind of stuck towards the outdoor side, the camping and survival and hunting, and later I tried, I got into a little bit of the, some of the more what became the tactical knife thing.
Yeah.
But not too much, but a few. I made a few.
Well, in preparing for this, I Googled quite a bit of your work, and I don't think I saw any fixed blades, which kind of made me sad. But now it sounds like I'd really like to see some of them.
Oh, they were pretty rough. I don't know. I never, I liked making them, but I can't really say what started to sour me on it. I don't know. I mean, I wasn't necessarily having trouble selling them. I didn't do well at the Blade Show when I went, but I did fairly well at some other shows. The Vegas show, that when the Beinfeld show was at the
Right.
What was the name of that? Riviera.
The old Riviera.
Yeah, the old one where they
Dirty River.
that, in fact, that was the first show that I ever sold out at, was the Vegas show.
Oh, is that right?
But yeah, I just, I don't know, for whatever reason, it really started to lose its luster for me. I never wanted to be, I mean, if you don't like what you're doing, you're not going to do it.
Right.
I mean, nobody, especially, I mean, even if it's your living, but I mean, I think especially if it's not your living, you're not going to, I don't want to go out there and grind fixed blades that I don't really want to make.
Yeah.
Would you ever consider making them in the future, like more of a gent's knife with the same skill set that you're bringing to your slip joints?
Actually, it's funny you say that. I get some grief from the guys in my Facebook group about not making any fixed blades. So I actually have a couple out there on the bench that I've kind of started playing with, but I haven't finished them out yet. But yeah, I mean, I don't rule out anything. I mean, I made a liner lock or two.
Right.
Look out.
So those early shows, you said Blade Show was your first show.
It was, yeah.
That's wild to think about. I know we who else did we hear that from? That Blade was their first show. Maybe a couple people, maybe Marsh or Billy or somebody.
I was thinking it was more than one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So you show up at Blade Show. It's your first show. You said you didn't sell any of your knives, right?
Nothing.
And so what you brought with you, though, was that survival knife, outdoor knife kind of stuff that you were...
They were mainly hunting knives.
Okay.
I had a few of the, what I would call a big camp chopper, and had a few of those, and had what I would call EDC stuff. Like I had a little bone handle file work, kind of a bullnose Skinner type deal. Okay. And that, that kind of stuff is what I would generally take. Utilitarian style knives. I really enjoyed the leather work, though. That's one thing. Not a lot of guys, I guess, know it now, but when I first started, I had a pretty good following for my custom sheaths and that kind of stuff.
Nice.
Did you make a wallet?
I did. I haven't made wallets now.
Somebody from South Texas, I can remember, made a wallet and it had like a pick set in it or something. I remember seeing it at a Blade Show.
That wasn't me.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know. Thought I'd ask.
Yeah, I made some, you guys remember when that movie, The Book of Eli, came out?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I bet I had 50 emails with guys wanting me to make leather rigs for them to carry, like Denzel was carrying his machete and that. And I made a couple of them, and I've done some other Baldric stuff for a couple other makers, like James Helm, he, Forged and Fire guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. The leather thing, I kind of missed that. I don't know. I always say I'm going to go back out there and bend some more leather, and then I end up not.
Right.
I have everything to do it, though. I got 2 beautiful sewing machines and a layout table and pretty much every hand tool you can think of for making leather. there's only so many hours in a day, and I guess I'd rather make slip joints.
Right. So Blade was your first show. You did the Vegas show, the one at the Riviera.
Mm-hmm.
Were you traveling around like this was like you attempting to make a go of it, right? This was, hey, let's try to get the stuff out there and see if it sticks or not. Is that kind of where you were?
Yeah, you kind of make, you make knives, you give them all to your friends and then your family, and then, a couple of guys, I sold a lot of knives for $75, with a custom sheath and the whole 9 yards.
Right.
And I thought, well, heck, and Bill's influence, oh, you need to, you ought to try going to a show. He didn't really mean, I think, Blade show, first rattle out of the box.
Right.
But he encouraged me to pursue it, I guess.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of why I started doing the show thing.
Okay.
It wasn't so much to make make money. I mean, we made a very, very good living, and it was just kind of a way to get out. And I mean, who doesn't want to go to Vegas, right?
Yeah. Or to shows. They're fun.
I've met a lot of great people through knives, just like firefighting. There's guys that I met through knives that I consider brothers, and
yeah.
Apparently you've never listened to the show. A few of the people on the show, I'm not going to name any names, but hate Vegas. They're Vegas haters.
Yeah. I've heard the anti-Vegas talk.
I don't.
I'd go in a heartbeat now if it was different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a friend that just got back, and he said it's terrible. He's like, they only let 3 people at a blackjack table, and there's glass between everybody, and I don't care for that.
It's hard when a place that the whole point of the place is a social environment, really, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Of some kind or another, maybe overtly social. You'd have to like slice that piece out of there. That I can only imagine what that's like. It's got to be weird.
Yeah.
All right, so
Vegas.
Tom's in. He's always in. Sean and I were out.
Big out.
Big out.
Hey, I get it, man. It's we would go out there and we'd make knives and go out there and set up a table at that Cowboy Christmas, they had with the NFR in December. Yep. And that's 2 solid weeks.
That's crazy.
I mean, it's way too long to be out there. And then to have to come back and turn around and go back the following month for the Vegas show at the Riviera at the time.
Right.
It's been a couple different places now, but it got to be heavy. I had to bow out of the whole NFR thing. That was that got to be too much.
All right. So you were doing some shows. Rupel's encouraging you to do stuff. You're still making fixed blades at the time, right?
Right.
And so you mentioned that you kind of got a little bit soured on it or something, or like it stopped to lose its appeal. Why do you think that is? Because it didn't seem to take off?
Well, I think I felt like there was a whole bunch of people out there doing the exact same thing I was doing.
Okay.
You know what I mean? It kind of, I don't know. I just kind of felt like my commitment and my interest in it was waning.
Yeah.
And I remember, and a couple of years before I had taken Rupel's and Rusty Preston's slip joint class down in Pleasanton and gone down there and watched them go through one and everything, and I would and I'd seen Bill making them. I mean, I'd show up down there with whatever I was working on, and he'd always take time to look at it and kind of guide me and help me all he could, but he wasn't a he would tell me, I'm not a fixed blade guy, but do this if but I just got to where I felt like everybody was kind of doing the same thing, and I didn't really feel like anything was distinguishing me from anybody else.
Yeah. And
I don't know. When I told Bill that, he said to stop being such a pussy and make a damn slip joint. That's exactly what he said. He said,
pretty funny.
Yeah. And so I
Some
said,
of
you
that
know what?
fatherly advice thing right there,
Yeah.
loud and clear.
Yeah. So that's exactly what I did. I went home and I got a pattern, and I went home and I struggled through one, and then it was, the spring was too hard, and it didn't sit right, and the handles and the handles were crooked. It didn't have a shield in it, and it had waves in the blade because I couldn't, I had the 2-inch marks, but I got the thing together and I got it to work, and man, it was on again. Just, I joke, I tell everybody that Bill Ruppel spent more of my money than my wife did even. Because then, I wanted to buy a surface grinder, and I wanted to buy a mill, and I wanted to buy, all of these things that, I guess you didn't have to have them, but sure made life easier if you did.
Yeah. I mentioned a couple times on here about, for me, the fastest way to wreck a hobby is to turn it into something that has a money angle, or something that becomes like, a pressure thing or whatever, right? Because that's not what hobbies or enjoyment is about, right?
That's a fact.
But I have this tendency to do it anyway. Was there any of that kind of built into your situation where it's like you said, maybe you end up making stuff that doesn't excite you anymore? And I don't know, that doesn't sound any fun.
Yeah. It wasn't one of the type, like, it wasn't typical burnout where, you get a guy that comes in and he gets to where he's making some stuff people like, and he gets bogged down with, and then he just burns out and quits making knives altogether. I would still, I still, during this time, I was still doing those fixed blades, and, but with the slip joints, I don't know. I felt like I was home,
Yeah. Everybody's got to find their thing, man.
Yeah. Yeah. And now there weren't that many guys making slip joints. It didn't seem like back in the day. And now it seems like everybody's making them.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. So you kind of hacked your way through the first one. Where did you go from there? Was it back to Bill's to like, okay, I really want to do this. Let's go.
Yeah. He told me, he said, you come anytime you want. And I think he may have regretted that over the years because I took him up on it. I tell everybody that if I do anything right on any of these knives, it's because I learned it in Bill Ruppel's shop.
Yeah.
The mistakes are my own.
Right.
And I would take my boat anchor down there, and he'd put down his masterpiece, and he'd come look at it. And I would say 9 times out of 10, within a couple of minutes, he knew what was wrong with it and how to fix it.
Yeah.
And he laughed, because it was giving me such grief. There was a time when I would make one and I couldn't get the blade to quit bouncing at the end and kind of coming back out of the handle. And I couldn't figure it out. And I did 2 or 3 like that, 4 or 5. And then finally I made a knife, and I just went down there and I said, look, I don't know what is going on. And he looked at it and he goes, I know what it is. Hold on a second. He went over to his grinder, and in about 30 seconds, he brings my blade back and he says, now it's going to sit. It's not going to fit right anymore. It's not going to be flush. He said, but open it and close it. And I did. And I was like, when I looked at it, it immediately clicked. I just got it then. It was completely Tang geometry, and I had been blowing it,
Yeah.
And I think I had gotten kind of, how you develop, at least I do, whenever I start to do something, I get tunnel vision on one certain aspect and I miss something sometimes.
Right.
And this was what I missed. And that was the turning point in my slip joints.
Okay.
That after that, I was able to get them all to work. I didn't get them all together. Sometimes I'd still scrap the pieces, but
right.
if one went together, it would generally work right. So
it seems like that that tunnel vision thing happens to probably all of us. I know it does to me, and not even on making knives, just on solving problems at work or whatever, right? Where you get so focused on something that the best thing to do is go grab a cup of coffee or a glass of water, or, walk around the building a couple times or something, right? And then come back and try to look at it with a different set of eyes, and surprising sometimes what you see, like, oh shit, why didn't I think about that before?
Man, I still do that to this day. you know, I'll get to a point where I want to put handles on and I won't know what I want to use, and everything looks like crap to me, and I don't want to, you know, and I'll just put everything down and go shoot my rifle, or, you know, go get the mail with Kimberly on the, you know, or just anything, you know, just anything to get out and get a little disconnect, go for a bike ride, anything. And then most of the time when I come back, it's like it's been laying there the whole time, you know?
Yeah. Right. It's weird, right? It's like
It is.
someone snuck in and fixed it, or just put a big arrow pointing at whatever the problem was. Like,
Yeah.
Well, sometimes we look at them and we think that, like, we get indecisive about our choices of materials, like it's the last knife we're ever going to make.
right.
And I don't know why we
Exactly.
do that. There will be other
You know,
knives, other material choices, but we're like, this is not perfectly matched to whatever. It's like, it's somebody's perfect knife, you know?
Sure. And you know what? I really have listened to a lot, you know, these episodes of you guys talking and about show anxiety and about all these different things. And I'm out there and I'll just shake my head, or I'll be cracking up laughing, you know, with my earbuds in. The wife will put her head in there. Are you okay? But yeah, that whole thing, you know, the anxiety over what knife handle you're going to use. When you say it like that, it's so absurd, you know.
Yeah.
Right.
Literally put anything on it, and somebody out there will like it, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you got to like it. You got to be satisfied with it at the end of the day. Dude, I mean, that's my whole thinking on it.
The
And
thing is, though, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, you know, that it gets to be so bad. I've knocked $100 set of ivory off and dropped it in the trash can because it just didn't look like it should be on the knife, or there was something about it that I didn't like, or, you know.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's a combo situation. Like, I'll sit there and be like, should I do canvas or whatever? Two different things that are totally have nothing to do. It's not going to matter.
Yeah.
But I'll think that it has to have the right one, and if I choose the wrong one, I'm going to not like the knife,
right.
which is absurd. It's not how it works. Like, I can make another one and choose that other material next time too. You know.
I just make it and somebody will like it, I guess. And if I don't like
You know
it, I'll
what?
make it with the other one next time.
Right. The next batch of 50.
Yeah. Shoot, I'm probably going to actually make 50 knives this year.
Yeah, there you go.
That's over a lot more than what I have made in the past.
That's a bad Thursday afternoon in crying knife world.
Yeah.
Brag about it.
Tom grinds knives in each hand, I heard. I don't know if
Yes.
that's true, but
I ground a bunch last week.
one in each hand on different grinders, use a one eye per knife. I don't
Yep. We've talked about that thing a few times on here about, it's kind of like, and I think Sean's point's a good one, right? It's got to feel right to you. That's
Yep.
super legit. Bill's words to you that if it ain't right, it's wrong, right? But somewhere in there's like, is it unhealthy at some point? Like, I think it's certainly possible to take all that too far.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, without a doubt, you know, you can beat yourself up to the point where, you know, you'll never put anything out there, you know?
Yeah. And it could be not about mistakes. It's just like green canvas or natural canvas.
Right. And it never fails if the knife I take that I doubt the handle choice, or I there's really something that I don't like about it, it's the first one to sell.
Right.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of times, like I do have it your ways or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And the combination that some people come up with, I'm just like, because I'm pretty basic in what I'd like, you know. Odds are I'm going to choose like red or black liners, but I've been building some stuff with like the neon green liners and some different handle combinations, and man, they turn out pretty good. I would never pick that,
Right.
but
Right.
at the end of the day, they look pretty damn good, I think.
Yeah.
The combination.
Yeah, it's a weird balance, right? It's like part of what makes your work good is making sure that you nailed it, right? And you don't put anything out that isn't that way. And at the same time, you got to stay in a healthy enough place that you can actually make some knives, right? And not let it turn into something that grinds you down instead of, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy sometimes some of the stuff that we do. I think all of us are what I consider a maker's maker, because I feel a lot of times we build past the expectations of our customers. Like we do stuff that they won't notice at times, if that makes sense.
Right. They'll message you back a couple weeks later and say, "Hey, I didn't notice this."
Right. No, that's cool.
I'll be like, it was a trap. You weren't supposed to take it apart.
If you saw that, it means you did some shit that you weren't supposed to.
Well, that's one thing I don't have to worry about too much, is people taking their knives apart when they get them from me.
Not so much a slip joint guy problem.
You've got bigger issues if they take it apart.
Yeah, right. It's coming back in a box.
So I have questions about like design and the traditional world. Do you mind if we go into some of that right now, or do you want to?
Sure, that's fine with me.
So do you do mainly traditional patterns, or are they your own, or how does that work? How does the slip joint work in that way?
Oh boy, here we go. Buckle up, boys.
No, I'm intrigued in how that works.
Yeah. I would say that a very, very large part of any knife I make is a traditional pattern, probably somewhere in the high 90s, as far as percentage goes. Knives, I see old knives in some of these old books, that I like, and so I'll try to find a pattern for it, or I'll try to modify something that I have to make it close to that or whatever. But yeah. I can call or text right now. I could get on my phone and call Tony Bowes and ask him for any pattern that he's ever made, and he'll send it to me no problem, Luke, here you go. I talked to him for the first time at the first ICCE show they had down in Kansas City, and he said, "Oh, you want some patterns? I'll send you some patterns. What's your email?" So I gave him my email address, and we weren't even all the way home because we stopped one night and to stay with a friend in Oklahoma on the way home, and those patterns were already in my email.
So
it could be anything he's ever done.
And so when you use that, do you say like this is a Bose pattern with permission? Is that like understood?
Oh yeah. That's just, that's to me, that's just your common courtesy. I got a bent gunstock pattern from Rick Menifee the other day, and when I make one, it's a pattern I got from Rick Menifee. I mean,
so some guys will kind of modify a traditional pattern and then kind of make it their own, and then you guys kind of share within their community, like the slip joint community.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, that's I like all my trapper patterns are all patterns that I got from out of Bill's shop. I was just there with my notebook, just tracing patterns.
It's very interesting and kind of different than the tactical or whatever you want to call it market, and it's like. Mm-hmm. And I like it. It almost to like Grace Horn talking about doing historical type scissors or things that she's seen in history. And that's kind of like what you guys are doing. You're finding patterns that you enjoyed probably without knowing as a kid, or, things you saw that you kind of greatly enjoyed, and you're kind of paying respect to it by doing it. And it always intrigues me, like what becomes an open pattern, what becomes something that anyone can use.
I mean, there's just not that many patterns that haven't already been done in the slip joint world. I mean, there's guys making original pattern stuff that they drew, and they, but it's similar to something that's already been done.
Yeah.
More like a modification of something that was already out there.
Yeah. I mean, you'll get them, and I do it. I mean, I'll change the blade shape in a trapper. We all kind of try to put our own spin on it, develop our own style. But the core, I mean, there's so many slip joint patterns that, man, I don't know if one person could ever make all of them. Just so many.
That intrigues me. And it's just like, are there other makers that get upset if you do like, let's say you do a modified version of something and then someone else is like, well, that looks like my modified version of that. Is there any of that out there, or is it still
not in the slip joint
friendly?
world? Not in the slip joint world that I've seen.
But that's really nice.
I've never seen it. I've never heard anybody say, "Oh, that guy copied my trapper pattern." I mean, I'd be willing to guess that the lion's share of trapper makers got their pattern the same place I got mine, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Well, there's a very interesting piece of this that, we talked about this with David Sharp when we did the Loveless thing. And I thought it was really interesting because a few times I've sent David a picture of a knife and said, hey, this is kind of cool. It's like a minor tweak almost on a shoot knife or whatever. And he'll be like, oh, that's the so-and-so shoot, right? It's like, wow, okay. I could barely tell that it was different than a Loveless pattern. You know what I mean? And part of it's because, he's an expert and I'm not. But it's also really a subtle thing. You know what I mean? And
Sure.
and it seems like that's true with traditional patterns too, where, it's like, okay, there's a sway back. Okay, well, there's a bunch of kind of different styles of sway back. And
Right.
and maybe it's a little bit looking at like tree leaves or whatever, right? Like identifying where did this come from exactly? And if you know enough about some of those subtleties and shapes and little bends here and there, like you said, you might be able to look at it and say, oh, that's Tony Bow's like pattern, right? And that's a Rupel like pattern or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Well, I can give 10 slip joint makers the very same pattern, and I'll get 10 distinct looking knives back.
Yeah.
I mean, for example, when we did the little recognition thing we did for Bill, we all made a single blade trapper, but you can look in there and they're all the same pattern. I promise you that we all got our pattern from Bill's shop, but you can see they're not generic like that. Everybody puts their own spin on it. And I think that's really cool. I probably say that because I haven't spent the time designing a badass tactical knife and had somebody trace it. That's I'm kind of immune to that in my world,
Yeah, it's different, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, there's the Loveless thing's the same way, right? Where Loveless said, we talked about it on the show. If you can make a better one, do it, buddy. And I think, we know that he gave patterns to people, especially people that he gave advice to or that paid respect to talk to him and all that kind of stuff. But it kind of became this kind of open design environment like traditional knives. And, how many guys, maybe less today than in the past, but say 5 or 10 years ago, how many makers were making Loveless patterns? Right? I mean,
yeah, really.
Hundreds at least.
All of them.
Yeah, all of them, right? The whole entire section of
seriously.
the blade show floor.
Well, that he was kind of, the man, as far as I knew anyway, for the, drop point hunter is
super iconic. Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody could recognize that.
Right. I wonder, I mentioned this example where I sent a picture of a knife to David and asked him about it. And, that's not the Loveless pattern. That's a so-and-so version of it. And I thought that was really interesting. And I almost wonder if the same kind of subtlety that you talked about, Luke, with those tribute knives that you made for Bill, if a casual observer or someone who isn't deep into slip joint stuff would notice some of those personal touches that you're talking about. You know what I mean? If they would really jump out at someone. So maybe that's really similar, right? I mean, I think there's a lot of people would look at it, walk down a row at Blade Show and look at slip joint knives. Yep, traditional knives. Yep, traditional knives. Yep, traditional knives. You know what I mean? And you might look at them, or other traditional makers might look at them and say, "Oh, that guy's doing something here, right? And this guy's out of the Rupel tree, family tree, and this guy's out of the." You know what I mean? And that subtlety might not be obvious to everyone.
Sure.
What in the Sam hell?
I noticed. I wanted to get onto you guys that not one of you, for the apocalypse, would want to carry a lockback whittler. I think that's absolutely wrong. How are you going to make spoons? I mean, we're talking about the apocalypse here, guys.
Whitler.
Yep.
What am I going to do? Toss a thumbbob on there? How am I going to get it fast?
Right. Luke felt deeply underrepresented in the Doomsday episode.
Oh, it wasn't so much that. It was having to listen to the Billy Cho this and Billy Cho that.
Right.
Come on.
I was waiting for the Billy hate to start. Here we go.
Yeah. All right. Now we're in our groove for episode.
I got nothing but love for Billy, I tell you that.
That's not what he said before we hit the green light, dude. You should have heard the shit he was talking.
Yeah.
Dude, he
yeah,
said
you're
not
right.
to mention that.
Yeah. Billy's our friend. Tone it down, okay? That's funny. Yeah, Luke he had picket signs and he was marching back and forth out in front of Mark of the Maker headquarters about that Doomsday episode. He was
Yeah, man.
Say no to Cho. I thought that was kind of harsh.
Yeah, exactly. It could be hate speech.
Say no to Cho.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic.
Dude, we got to get those T-shirts for Blade next year.
Say no to Cho
Say no to Cho.
I'm in.
with a break dancing Billy Cho with the crossed out symbol over the front.
Mark of the Maker, say no to Cho.
Oh.
I'm in. I don't care what it costs. I'm in. Let me know.
Say no to Cho.
Oh, that'll be on our next challenge coin. That can be on the flip side of the challenge coin, Tom. We'll save that.
Yeah. There you
All
go.
right. So the design thing is a very interesting question. Is there more you wanted to talk about on that, Michael? I do think it's really interesting, the idea that there's that contrast, right? We've talked about it a little bit before in earlier episodes when we talked about design, but it's an interesting thing.
It's a fun, not just, it's like a building practice. It's like, because we used to do back in the day, the swap pattern.
Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah.
And it's the same kind of thing. And that's what I was thinking of when you're saying, everyone making one pattern, how they look different. I made a Les George and it was obviously vastly better than, but
It's a pity Les doesn't listen to this show.
yeah, of course not. But it's interesting how you can still see someone's signature on someone else's pattern. And
Yeah.
it's kind of fun. I think I'd like to bring that back one of these days, do some more of that stuff.
Yeah.
That day is today. We can do it now.
Let's do it.
I'd be down for a pattern swap with you guys.
We've
I'd love to see your guys' take on some of my stuff.
Send me an alpha pattern.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, okay.
Here we go.
The gauntlet has been thrown.
Okay.
Ain't no gauntlet. I just want to knock Tom's stuff off.
With his blessing.
Do it better.
We all heard it. We all
Be
heard
honest, that's a very alpha move.
Oh. Hey-o.
I was thinking fixed blades, but I'll send you an alpha pattern.
I don't make fixed blades right now.
Don't make fixed blades. Come on.
That's hate speech right there.
No, it ain't
Just
hate
like
speech.
say no to
I just want to get good at making folding knives.
There you go. That's fair. I think that's a great point, Michael. Some of those pattern swaps are really, really, really interesting to look at. And it fits exactly with what Luke was talking about, right? Where they all make a single blade trapper for Bill and, they look different. Why don't you talk a little bit about that, Luke, that whole thing that happened at Blade Show? We talked about that in an earlier episode, but how did that happen?
Well,
Who put it together? Who are some of the makers that were involved?
Well, I think that the original idea came from Bubba Crouch.
Okay.
And Bubba is that friend that you do not put on speakerphone when your wife is in the truck with you.
That's fair.
So he kind of threw it out there to all of us. We have the slip joint cartel guys. We have a group text. There's about 13 of us or so on this text, and it's ridiculous, like a bunch of teenage girls. I don't know how any of us ever get a knife made, to be honest with you.
Right.
We're too busy, busting each other's balls over everything. But we kind of went behind Bill's back and contacted everybody, Enrique Pena and Pepe Halomo and these Rusty Preston and Bubba and Toby Hill and me and Tom Ploppert, Trey Gunzel, Bobby House, Roan West. We're all we're all in that, we're all Rupel's pupils, I guess. You know?
Yeah.
And so yeah, we wanted to do something, you know, just to show him how much we appreciate all he's done for us. You know, I mean, I talk about me going down there and he'd put his masterpiece down and pick up my boat anchor, and he has done that for all of us.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, and it wouldn't matter. It never mattered if he was getting ready to go to the blade show. It didn't matter. It was never, no, I can't, you know, come another day. It was, come on, you know, and, you know, never expected any pay for it. You know, now he don't buy many lunches or much cold beer, you know, and that's rightfully so, I think, you know. But yeah, you know, it just, we just wanted to do something for him just to show him that how much we appreciate it. And they weren't good enough, but you know, they were the best that we could do. And he was pretty moved, you know, was about as emotional as Bill gets, I think.
Yeah.
You know, and we were all
how could you not be, right? I mean,
yeah, we were all kind of sniffing onions, I think, you know, and he had gotten a couple of other awards. He had just gotten another blade cover, and he had gotten, you know, a couple of awards there at the show for the, you know, the banquet and everything. And, you know, it really, I believe, was a special weekend for him. And I'm glad that we were able to take part in that somehow.
Yeah.
Pretty awesome. It's a fitting tribute to his sharing of knowledge, which is, I mean, shit, that's some of the most important stuff out there. Some of the most valuable stuff out there.
Yeah.
In a knife making world.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
He actually, you know Jeremy Marsh at all?
Yeah, I do.
He actually invited us down to learn from him. But we were all very inebriated. This was in the bar down there at the one of the gatherings or something like that. So I never wanted to, you know, take him up on that, because we've all said yes when we should have said no during drinking times.
Yeah,
but I thought it was awful nice of him.
Yeah, Jeremy actually did come to Bill's shop.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I don't remember exactly when it was, but Bill had a doctor's appointment, so Jeremy and I kind of hung out a little bit and got to talk. And I met him at also at the Fort Lauderdale show, and we talked a little bit. And I like Jeremy. Jeremy's a good guy, man.
Yeah, he's all right.
Way nicer guy than that Billy Joe, I tell you that.
Yeah. No,
I can tell you, though, another guy that you've had on the show that is really good at making you feel inadequate if you're next to his table is Jerry McGinnis.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, man, that guy.
Just think about like 10 years ago being at Blade Show, and he's like 13 and selling out. It was awesome.
Oh, yeah. Thanks.
Right.
He's been good for a long time.
All the stuff that he's done, you know, and I don't know how old he is, but he can't be that old.
He just turned 30, didn't he?
I wouldn't have guessed he was that old, but.
Well, he's looked 12 since he was 10.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I mean, you know, he shows up, puts his knives out, and then all of a sudden, man, I've got a crowd around my table. Of course, they're all trying to get in on the lotto for Jerry, but at least people came to my table.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's a good guy. Makes even better knives.
Yeah. Oh yeah, man. We you know, we kind of, once the crowds left, we had a chance to kind of talk a little bit. And yeah, really, really nice guy. I really like Jerry.
Yeah. We try to have generally good guys on the show, with exception for people like Billy. But
Well, we made him an exception for Luke.
Well, yeah, you know.
Well, that's got to spread the love around a little bit. Don't want to look biased or anything.
Oh man.
So you're in the slip joint thing, you're cranking along. So you have stuff going on, right? Like, I know you're talking about doing some of the same and kind of passing some of the same knowledge on to other people, right?
Yeah. I bet you that Bill's phone goes off 30 times in just a couple of hours with people asking him questions or wanting to come to his shop. And, you know, I want to try to be a guy that, and it's been, it's been happening. I've been getting quite a few myself, guys, they're struggling makers and hey, how do you do this? And, if it's something like that, that's real simple, I can usually answer those questions. But I tell everybody not to take it call him back personally, because if he did, he would never do anything but return phone calls. Right. And you guys probably, you guys probably can relate to that, But so we're actually gonna have a little class up here next weekend. Everybody's showing up on Friday, but Saturday and Sunday they're gonna get to watch Bill go through a double blade trapper. Ooh. And it's a demo only class. My shop's not really big enough for that many, for 6-8 guys to build their own knife, but I have room that they could get around and see, learn from the man himself, how to take one from setup to completion.
Okay.
And so yeah, it's going to be fun. I think mostly, this whole lockdown thing's got Bill stir crazy and he wanted to make a road trip. So, but that's okay. It's always good to see him, and it'll be good to have some knife guys around, and
he's driving,
drink a little whiskey, and oh yeah, he'll come up in his camper.
A little.
That's a little ways.
Yep. 2,000 miles.
Wow.
But I have a full RV hookup, and I call it Chateau Rupel. So
that's pretty cool.
That's where he hooks up when he comes. That's his spot. So he just hooks up when he comes up here.
The class sounds pretty cool too.
Very much.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fun. We got, there's some guys coming, like Rick Dunkerlee's going to come. And
nice.
Yeah, we're going to have.
So if
I tried to get Babtier to come out.
Where do you put the stuff up in your group?
Yeah, it's just there in the group. I did post it on my Instagram.
Cool.
I gotta say, the Rupel's pupil sounds like the worst candy ever.
I don't. That's really not an original term. There was another student that Bill had who came up with that, and I am at a loss for his name. If I think of it, I'll send it to you. But I can't remember who was the first one to say Rupel's pupils. But it did make me laugh.
If you don't mind me asking, going back a little bit on the design stuff again. Mm-hmm. So how does it work for you? You said that Bose would email you. So is it basically just a line drawing and then you print it out, cut it out, and just transfer from there?
Yeah, basically that's the way it is. If somebody asks me for a pattern, if I have a piece of scrap liner material, I'll try to go ahead and scribe it out on steel before I send it. But we can all pretty much work from a copy or a line drawing. It's not jet engines; it's a pocket knife. So
yeah. I was curious about that when you said
I've got steel patterns and I've gotten paper patterns or email patterns, and they all it's either any of them work just as good, I think.
Do you guys still use, when you get to a point where you're at, where you've made quite a few slip joints, and I want people to understand that slip joints may look easy, but to me, they're hard. They're hard for me to design. They're hard for me to do the things that I want them to do as far as aesthetically. I'll see a slip joint and I know that tang's going to stick out. It's part of how they look, and it looks wonderful. Except when I design one, I'm like, I want to hide it, and it's really hard. But there's that tool called the stop indicator. What is it called?
The Rupel gauge.
Yeah. Do you guys at your level still use those, or are you like?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Every knife I make goes on that Rupel gauge. The very first thing I do. I mean, what I do, and my kind of process is I'll cut out parts, profile them, and I'll do my initial surface grinding just to kind of knock the scale off of the steel and thin it down to the thickness I want. But and then I leave, for example, I'll leave it about 3 thou over where I want it. Then I'll go through and then I'll heat treat everything, come back, dust it off again on the surface grinder where it's clean. And then I go and I redo the pattern, and I get my hard lines, basically where I'm going to go, that I know the knife will function because I've tried the pattern and the indicator.
Mm-hmm.
Then I cut all of that stuff out, spring included, and then it goes on what we call the Rupel gauge. And that is where you get your initial, for lack of a better term, your initial setup. It tells you kind of more or less where the point's going to be when the knife's closed, and kind of where it's going to sit at half stop if you're doing half stops, or what the basic backline profile spine is going to look like, and that indicator is is the beginning of it all.
Yeah, and for listeners, it's like, I guess when you're opening and closing a slip joint, that spine, the good ones, they need to be lined up when they're open, when they're closed, when they're half stopped.
Yeah,
and that indicator is what really helps you keep it there, correct?
Right. That gives you a ballpark. Now you're still going to have to fit it in the liners.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of taking it apart and putting it back together, and taking it apart, putting it back together, taking it apart, putting it back together. But yeah, that's just part of it. Eventually you develop a feel, and it doesn't take you as long.
Okay. No, I'm very intrigued by slip joint design and how they're done, and a well-made slip joint is a thing of beauty to me.
So you mentioned this terminology, Luke, the flush in three positions thing. So what we're talking about is the spring on the back.
Exactly.
And the way it all lines up in each of those positions, right?
Exactly right. Yeah. Yeah. You just want it to stay flush with the back of the liners all the way through the operation of the knife.
Right. Right. It's got to deflect as it goes between those positions, but when it's in the positions, then it's flush and smooth on the hand. You can't feel that there's any kind of disruption there or anything.
Right. Right.
So it almost feels like, we've talked to a couple different makers, and the idea of, is there some kind of, for lack of better terminology, some kind of formula to like on a locking knife, right? Is there some kind of standard formula for what that area around the pivot looks like? And if you can work that into your design, then your design's going to work. And I think we heard from Jerry that he has some of that formulaic kind of approach, right? Where he knows that if he does this, this, and this the right way, or relative to one another, it's going to work. And I think you've kind of gotten to that point, right, Michael, where you have, maybe a recipe is the wrong way to put it, but you have a pretty good idea on how everything's going to fit.
Yeah, you can look at it and say that's not going to work, or you can just have a piece of paper or CAD and work at open space and be like, this geometry will work.
Right.
For the most part.
So it sounds like the slip joint thing's kind of similar, that if you get certain pieces right, and maybe that's where the Rupel gauge comes in, it's going to work from there. And then the rest is, okay, if I want to make a little tweak to the outside shape of the blade past this point, you can do that, right? You can go off and play around a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. You can, the tip of your knife is going to, on any given pattern, is going to sit in there. It's basically going to sit in there because you have to have the tip inside the handler, or there's no point, right?
Right.
So there has to be room for that.
Or there's too much
as
point.
long as you have
look at it, but yeah.
Yeah. So, you're pretty free with blade shapes and that kind of thing, as long as you respect the positions of the, where it sits when it's closed, where it sits when it's open, where it sits at half stop. I would go so far as to call that a matter of design or personal preference. For per maker, it's on an individual basis.
Yeah.
But they're just like any other knife. There's hard rules. Your spring notch can't be too long, or it's not gonna sit right. The spring is gonna stick up past the end of the heel of the knife, and it's not gonna. It doesn't look right. When you look at a slip joint and you close it and you look down on the tang, you don't want to see the spring sticking way up, or you don't want to see the heel of the knife sticking way up above. You want them to be even,
right?
And that's the type of thing that the Rupel jig or the rise fall indicator or whatever you want to call it, that's the type of thing that it helps you get right early on so you're not scrapping a bunch of knives.
Okay. So Michael's got to go to slip joint school. That's step one.
Well, yeah, that's step one. But I've looked at those and been like, I wonder if I would buy one of those, or if it's one of the things where it's like, oh, I don't know. You don't need that. Sounds like I need to buy one though.
Yeah. Does he need to buy one, Luke?
No, he doesn't.
The answer is always yes. More tools.
If you're gonna make one or two slip joints and then forget about it, you could probably get away with the old on a board method. Tony Bow still makes every knife on a board. He doesn't use an indicator or anything. Of course, he can probably just grind one in his sleep and it comes out perfect.
Yeah.
But if you're gonna do a few, if it's something that you're interested in, then you don't have to buy one. I'll just send you pictures of mine. I know you can make one. If I made one, you can make one.
Yeah, I've seen them and didn't know if that was somebody's, I don't want to take someone's tool or somebody's,
It's no, that Bill was actually, as to my knowledge, was the first one to use that as a dial indicator. Everybody was doing it with on the block of wood or whatever. And as far as I know, he's the first one to come up with that indicator to tell him when he was close, and he's through trial and error. I'm sure he's come up with a set of numbers that he teaches people to look for,
Yeah.
What you want. And, this will be more or less where you end up. So, but I mean, yeah, they're not difficult to make. I mean, you could probably knock one together in an hour or so. I just buy those little cheap indicators from Harbor Freight to make mine. The last time I made one was, I don't even remember, probably when I first started making slip joints.
Yeah.
Interesting. I think for anybody who's actually sat down and looked at, the way Tony does it on a board or on a piece of wood or whatever, on some kind of jig, right, where you can see stuff all lined up, I think you could quickly realize that, people think of locking knives as like, I think there are people that look at locking knives like there's some kind of, advanced thing, or, you know what I mean? Like it's somehow more complicated or technical. And maybe there's some truth to that depending on what you're thinking about. But if you look at a slip joint knife, and there's a lot going on, right? To get all that to fit the right way and come out as clean as it is in all those different positions.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's a variance, like each knife will take less time to get flush than this knife, even if they're the same material or the same pattern. It seems to vary so much. I'm sure that, putting these things together like we're doing is, or at least like I do it, is, it's not exactly science. It's just, you just kind
of get the hang of it.
Yeah. You just get to the point where you have a feel, it's like anything else you do. And it's like, shooting, if you are a competitive shooter and, all of that kind of stuff comes easy for you. If you do something long enough, you'll eventually get to where you can, I don't know about be good at it, but you'll at least be able to get some functional.
Right.
All right. So another question here. Your shield work, pantograph or the old school mill hardened carbide / steel plate?
I actually do both. I have a small benchtop pantograph, and I also have some stuff that I started out with the parsers and stuff. I didn't buy a pantograph right away, but yeah, I mean, I still do both. I have a lot, like maybe $1,000 worth of the shields and parsers to still use up. So some of my knives will have those. If I get a custom, somebody wants a Damascus shield or something like that, then I'll cut that on my pantograph.
That's another interesting part of slip joint design is shields, where they came from, who made them up, who can use them, and all that good stuff. What can you tell us about that?
I am not aware of any hard rules about any of the shield shapes. I mean, the guy I get them from, you can literally buy one of each, and he's got, 30 of them or 40 of them on the page. So there's some knives like some knives, like I say a hard rule, but I just Bill will say, a sow belly shield should only have a sow belly should only have a sow belly shield in it. And it's the little one, and it's kind of designed, it looks kind of like a lady's corset.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And, I don't really know of anybody who is that hardcore traditional. I mean, if you're doing repros, like Tony Boats does some stuff that's actual reproductions of those old knives, and he knows which knife had what shield and from what year, and he can just rattle this stuff off to you. And, if you're trying to take notes, you never keep up.
Okay. So it's not like there's a bunch of shields and they interchange them. It's like a shield went with a pattern type of thing.
Well,
for the most part, maybe.
Well, like I said, to my knowledge, there's no hard rule that says you have to use any certain shield on particular patterns. I kind of just do whatever I feel like. If it's a Damascus shield, then I want to use a little bit bigger shield because I want to show off more of the steel.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
If it's a smaller knife, then I want to use one of my smaller patterns because I might not have enough room side to side to put the shield in.
See, going back to that, driving us crazy with materials, I feel like having different shield options and trying to decide, I'd be like, shit, should it be the half titty with the drooping ball or the,
right.
whatever the official names are.
Yeah. Hey, that's as good as any. I don't know them all either.
Some are pretty funky, and I wonder what the significance was. Is it just a random drawing? Does it mean something? Those things intrigue me.
Yeah, that's a field of study you could probably write a whole book on, to be honest with you.
I'm going to get my doctorate in shields.
There you go. And then every person you asked, you'd probably get a different explanation for it.
Oh, yeah.
Right. The good thing is no one would ever ask me about it, so I never have to prove that I didn't know what I was talking about.
Yeah. Talk about the realm of the obscure, right? To most people. It is an interesting point. So you do some custom stuff, right? Where you've made special shields for a customer. Mm-hmm. I know I've seen some stuff in your group. Maybe talk about a couple of the custom shield things that you've done and kind of why or what that was all about.
I did. I think the most recent custom I did like that was the Bar 7. That ranch brand has been around since the 1800s, and it's a family brand. And a guy who actually buys a lot of knives from a lot of us down there, that started down there because he lives in Corpus Christi. His grandpa gave him that brand, so he wanted a few knives to kind of commemorate that occasion. And so that's why I went through that, and it was interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. My wife has a Glowforge, one of those little 3D lasers, So she cut out the pieces, and then I went trying to use, where they were cut out. And I must have tried 3 or 4 different times before I finally just took the pieces and smoothed them up with sandpaper and casted them in epoxy. And that's how I ended up making the pattern that I finally used in the knives.
Okay.
And that's the way, for me anyway, Tim Robertson is the guy that taught me about pantographs. I knew, I've seen pantographs, but in most people's shops, they just sit there and collect dust, and they use it as a flat surface to set stuff,
Right. Mm-hmm. With a weird arm in the way all the time. Yeah.
So Tim Robertson's the first one that kind of got, he got kind of all of us that are, cartel guys for the slip joint cartel, he kind of got us all going with pantographs. And, it's really cool to have that option to, throw a piece of steel up there and cut a custom shield. And, it's been cool for me. I really like it.
That is cool.
And I have made them the other way where I cut the pocket out with the parser, and then I put one of the pre-made shields that I buy and trace it out and then try to make that fit. That's interesting too. If you want to talk about making yourself drink alcohol, man, it's tough to get the right fit, and if there's a giant gap in it, it looks like crap. You can't send that out.
Right.
So
Michael and I have talked a bunch of times about 3D printers and him and Hod a lot. about, man, 3D printer seems really cool. I could come up with some cool things to play around with it. But, it's like its own hobby or something to run one of those. Right? It's not like a turnkey thing. They sound like they're a turnkey thing, but they're like a require care and feeding kind of thing. But it seemed, didn't Chris Taylor, he's done some 3D printed stuff for doing shields.
Yeah, and those patterns that he's making are on the money. You know, I mean, they're exactly 4-to-1. If your machine is set for 4-to-1, it's going to be right.
Yeah,
I like using them. I get a good number of them. Some of them I've made myself, like the customs and stuff. But man, a lot of that stuff, it's really nice just to be able to get it from him.
Yeah. So there you go, Birch. There's your excuse. Launch into slip joint world. You get to buy yourself a fancy gauge and a 3D printer.
I feel like that CNC might be able to handle that job too.
Right. Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, I expect so.
All right. You can use the 3D printer to print some googly eyes to go on, though.
So you're saying a new CNC machine is what I heard.
Obviously, that's what I said.
Yes.
It only makes sense.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. I've got a question for you, Luke.
Okay.
I've never made a slip joint, but I really like slip joints, and I've probably had at one point or another 300 or 400 of the Great Eastern Cutlery slip joints. Do you have a favorite pattern?
If I had a favorite pattern, I'd have to say it'd be the small toothpick, like my dad used to carry.
A single blade?
It is a single blade, yeah.
Oh, very cool.
A multi-blade, my favorite pattern is probably a Seahorse Whittler. I really like Whittlers, though. I like to build Whittlers. I like to try to find obscure Whittler patterns. And
Seahorse Whittler. I don't know if I don't.
It's like a Warncliffe, right?
It is. It's a split back. So you got to grind a taper, and they're kind of a cool knife to make. They can be intimidating, but once you actually see one done, it's not that bad.
That is pretty funky.
You've got a really, really nice one on your Facebook group I just saw.
Oh, yeah. Luke, why don't you explain what the split back thing means? I know it's hard. It's probably easier to show it, which that's what podcasts suck at, is showing pictures of stuff. But if you can, try to explain what a split back is.
Well, all it is the main blade on a split back Whittler will be, for example, 140 thousandths thick. Okay. And then the springs and the secondary blades will be half that. So they'll be 70. So you can't work the knife with the big knife and the small knives on the same spring. There won't be enough room for it to function. It'll rub the sides and the blades will touch and it'll be a nightmare. So you have to grind a tapered wedge in the back, and it pins through, it goes right between the springs, and the big end holds the lesser blades apart, and then it tapers on up almost to nothing towards the big side. So that basically in the front you have the main blade with the two springs, and then on the back side it's kind of it's kind of slanted or it's wider at the back, and it's got that spacer between, and that frees up the room for the knife to function.
It's a really good explanation, and it'll help a lot to go find a picture of what that looks like. Because
they're really cool.
Yeah, it is really a neat idea.
Seems like it'd be really complicated to get all the holes going through at 90 degrees too.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm going to be real honest with you. On a split back like that, I'm not really clear on the science of how it works, but it fixes itself when you put it together, and it works. It just doesn't seem
that works.
It doesn't seem like it should be possible. You know what I mean? Once you open it up at the back, it seems like those holes would be off.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, it works.
You know what it is, Luke? Magic.
It's wizardry.
Sean's down.
That. Yeah. Sean's really the only real wizard that I know.
Yeah, that's a very good point. It's a very good point.
Oh, you're too kind.
Michael, do you have a question you wanted to ask?
No, just kind of curious about like your favorite machinery or process in your shop.
Favorite process?
Like, what do you love and what sucks?
Well, hand sanding sucks.
But they're small blades. They can't be that bad.
Well, it still sucks. But you're right that it's not as bad as trying to hand sand a gigantic buoy. But yeah,
I'm with you.
I would say I probably like that right up at the end when I'm doing those really final details. I'm making sure the spines are square and flush, and I'm making sure that the parts that are going to show are nice and shiny, and I'm doing my little, file work, or I'm, just that. I think my favorite part is almost like suspense. It's that just before you nail the thing together, and once you nail it together, man, you're committed. If you forgot anything, you're going to remember it right after you beat it together. And it's hard. There's virtually nothing that you can fix once it's together. If it's wrong, it's going to be wrong, or you're going to have to take that knife apart. It's really hard there's a few things, but it's really hard to fix stuff once you've already, peened those pins.
Have you ever thought about doing a screw together type slip joint?
Uh-oh.
No.
Treacherous territory.
No.
I say no. I considered it. I don't know. I feel like, I don't know. It just seems like there's a lot of guys doing that already,
Yeah, I get it.
Oh boy. We just lost all our screw together slip joint listeners.
You're probably going to lose all the ones you gained from this episode. We'll now quit the show because I was on.
There you go.
But
the slip screw cartel is gone.
That's right.
Yeah, Enrique Pena, he does a lot of the screw together slip joint stuff when he does slip joints, and it's kind of cool. It's just not really where I wanted to go with it. I have a Tapmatic and I have the deals to put all that kind of stuff together. I don't know. It's just not something that I really. It doesn't really trip my trigger, so I hadn't really thought about messing with it much.
Do what you like.
Yeah, still trying to learn how to build a slip joint. I don't know if I want to go off on too many tangents with it.
Yeah. I think that that point Luke just made about the fact that you're basically peening this together, right? There's a finality to that, right? Where, like you said, it's like there's no going back, right? We're going to get this done, and aside from cleanup and whatever, it is what it is. And
I say that, but I mean, they can come apart, and you can take them apart successfully and fix things and put them back together. It is just a colossal pain in the ass to that.
Right.
So yeah, there's a commitment to it. Once you beat it together, that's
that's kind of an interesting twist. Right? I mean, I guess, what's the closest thing for what you guys do to that? Gluing up handles on a fixed blade, right? But I mean, you could kind of turn that back if you really had to.
Yeah, a torch and a chisel, and you just pop them off and put new ones on.
Yeah.
There's nothing I can't put together that I can't destroy back to its element.
Right.
How big a hammer you need.
Yeah, there you go. That's fair. Yeah. That's fair. It just seems like an interesting twist to the whole thing, right?
Oh yeah, I think that's what appeals or is appealing to me is just the finality. Yeah, it's nothing's final, but it seems more like, okay, this is done. This is done. I'm not taking it apart. I'm not doing anything. It's either going in the trash or going to a customer.
Right.
Man, I wish I had a nickel.
A nickel for what?
Every time I had one beat together and had to drop it in the scrap. You guys are bringing up painful memories for me. I need a drink.
Sorry. I was going to say, maybe that's what Michael needs. That'll be his, I have to stop working on this knife scenario that he gets into every once in a while, like where he can't stop. Okay, I got to do this one more thing. No, I better do this other thing. No, I'm going to change this little thing. Maybe you need to just beat it together, Michael.
I'll fix it till it's destroyed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's part of the deal, I think.
Yeah, I had a knife that I sold in Fort Lauderdale one time, and before I sold it, somebody had picked it up and forced the cutting edge down onto the spring. So there's this big, scratch, and there's. So anyway, long story short, I took the thing home, fixed it, cleaned it up, and messed it up during the sharpening process, and ended up having to refund the guy's money.
Oh.
So, I guess that just tells it any little thing you try to do can become a major thing if you're not careful.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah. Bringing up all that pain.
Yeah. Well, what doesn't kill you makes you drink more. I think that's how the saying goes,
I think
right?
so. Yeah. It's really close.
Man, what's your favorite steel to work with, and what's your favorite handle material to pair up with that steel?
My favorite steel is CPM 154.
Good answer.
I can heat treat it here easily. It's forgiving enough. I just, I've made knives out of A2, and I like using some of the Damascus and stuff like that. And I've got a couple, like Kelly Vela. She sent me some of her rip Damascus, and so I'm pretty excited to work with her. But my favorite steel is for sure CPM 154. My favorite handle material is stag. I make two types of knives. I make stag knives and knives I wish I'd put stag on.
I'm sorry, your favorite steel was what? D2?
Oh, boy.
Depends on what filter you're listening through.
Yeah.
I've never made a knife out of D2.
Oh. Never.
What?
Not one time have I ever used D2 on a knife. I have a platen for my grinder made out of D2.
Tom's like, you're
But I've
dead
never
to
used-
me.
I know we had this great relationship starting.
You were about to be my new best friend, and then you said never D2.
No, I didn't say never. I said I never have. I just I've
See, he's backpedaling.
seen some
now.
really. Well, I mean, I just don't want to. I'm gonna be honest with you. We're just gonna lay it all out there. I don't want to hand sand a D2 blade.
Who does?
Then don't.
I don't want to hand sand
That's
paper. Nothing.
yeah. And I don't want to. That's why guys ask me do you use M4, and I'm like, no, I have no desire to do that. It's great stuff, but for slip joints, if you're anytime you're gonna hand finish anything, you have to think about that, or you'll be miserable.
Yeah, M4 is pretty rough. Good steel.
It's an interesting thing because I think Luke has, I don't know, man, he's got guardrails, right? It's got to be hand sanded. That's a thing, right? For the kind of traditionals you make. I mean, I think for you, that's part of it being done, right?
It is. I've tried to leave belt finishes on knives before, and it's a personal thing. I've seen some gorgeous knives out there with, that are belt finished, but for me, it's just not something that I feel like, I can leave. And I'll tell you why. I think it is because I don't think I grind good enough. And, that the hand sanding, whether anybody will admit it or not, it does help to hide some little blips and mishaps that you do. Now, the blade still has to be ground right, or you'll get the waves in it and everything like that. But if you have a good, clean, linear finish on there, you can get away with not as precise grinds, where if you're grinding a knife I'm familiar with all you guys' work. So, I know you guys are grinders, but, I'm just not. I feel like that's one thing. It's popular. A lot of guys like it that buy my knives. And, I just kind of dance with the one that brought me, as it were,
Right,
For sure.
right.
Yeah, I can't do them either. Mine look like dog shit when I try. That's
Leave
just
them belt finish.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some of those guys can do just it looks like a machine type of thing.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. Mine are just like, what the fuck? So
Which mine- the ones I leave sure don't look like the ones I see on the internet, you know?
No. So hand rub it gets.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But I like all knives. I'm a knife guy. I don't care I like guys that make things. I like knife makers. I don't care if you make your whole knife on a CNC machine and then put it together. And so I don't care about any of that. If it's cool, I'll dig it. You know, I've never seen anybody's product, you know, even if it's a knife that I don't care for, there's something about it that I can dig on, you know? And I think that just comes from being a guy who likes knives as a rule.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
Great answer.
But there's some shit I don't like.
I'm, you know, yeah.
Luke's trying not to go there.
Well, got off quiet.
I was just going to say that nobody cares what I like anyway. I mean, who the hell am I? You know, nobody knows me.
Yeah. All right. Well, so you talked earlier about the, I know, you kind of, I don't know if serious or joking, called it the Northwest Slip Joint School. You know, the idea of doing demos or whatever. Is that something that you want to continue to try to expand, or?
You know, it is. I feel like I don't know of that many slip joint makers up here in the Northwest. I don't know that many of them. The ones I know don't live here. So
yeah.
There's a guy that's north of me but I taught him how to make slip joints. So it's something. I mean, you know, if we can get guys that are interested in coming up and learning, you know, make a knife or whatever, and maybe I might take some guys that, you know, one or two guys at a time that maybe we could do a build along. Maybe I don't know. I'm definitely not closed off to the idea, you know, but I definitely would like to have some kind of event, hopefully yearly, you know, that involves some sort of knife, you know, slip joint teaching.
Yeah. Like kind of like a hammer in, but not a hammer in, like a slip joint in.
Yeah. Yeah. A grind in or whatever you want to call it. Yeah. Plus it gives me an excuse to, you know, barbecue and drink whiskey and all that good stuff.
Oh yeah. So that sounds like a really cool thing. And it kind of fits with that idea that, you know, you learned this from somebody else and maybe you can pay some of that forward. That's a cool deal. You also did some DVD, some video stuff, right? Some video instructional stuff.
Yeah. This is that funny story I was telling you about.
Oh yeah.
So Chris Crawford calls me and he says, or he messaged me on Facebook and he says, hey Luke, I'd like to make a slip joint video, just a single blade trapper. I'm looking for a high end, you know, guy that makes high end slip joints to do a video. I was like, well, whose number do you want? You know, I mean, I figured, you know, so I said, well, he's like, well, I was kind of hoping that you would do it. I was like, oh,
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, man, that sounds like a fun project, you know? And he came down and the feedback that I've gotten has been pretty good.
Very cool.
You know, it seems like a lot of guys have, you know, at least found some information that they could use. And that's what it was all about. You know, it was a fun project and Chris does a really, really awesome job on his videos.
Yeah,
he does. Is this one rated R? Is it TVMA? What's the situation on that?
No,
partial nudity, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, you know, it's basically G-rated.
Trying to get some sales going here.
Well, maybe PG-13 because you do have to look at my ugly mug.
Oh,
so
yeah.
You know, maybe you wouldn't want the young kids to watch it.
Right. Don't anyone get frightened.
Did stay fully clothed, so I was a little disappointed when I got my copy.
Too funny.
Well, heck, Sean, I didn't know you wanted the other video.
You're right. Yeah, the special one.
Well, dude, I mean, not even going to validate that with a fucking answer.
So this was a series, or this is? I know the one is slip joint embellishments. Like, what kind of content is in there for people who might be interested?
Well, the slip joints with Luke Swenson is just basically me going through a single blade trapper build. You probably will recognize the knife, Mark, if you ever see the video cover.
Right.
So basically, I just go through the basic setup and, all the way to the end. I do some bolster fluting, and I do a long pull, and I do a little file work, and I do, just some stuff in the embellishments video and the shield inlay and all that kind of stuff. We kind of filmed them all together, and then Chris kind of did everything to make them 2 separate videos.
Okay. So it's 2 separate things, but kind of closely tied.
Yeah.
To make a knife from Mark.
Yeah.
Or a knife that ended up as Mark's, I guess. Probably better way to say that.
Yeah, well, And you know what? That show that I went to with that knife, when you and I were texting that day, what I was thinking of was like 2 years before, I was at that same show, and I had what I thought was a pretty good knife.
Yeah.
That later ended up on the cover of Blade in March 2017.
Yeah.
And what nobody knows about that knife is that I didn't sell it at the show. It sat there on the table.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I ended up selling it to a guy on the way home via a phone conversation. And
that's
when
crazy.
it came out on the cover, I called him, and he's the guy I made the Bar 7 for. So, this guy's been, I said, "Hey man, do you still have that knife?" He's like, "Oh, I traded it to my brother-in-law for some dozer work."
Oh man.
Like, okay, never mind.
Dude, your legacy got sold down the river.
Yeah, man. That's the way it goes.
Oh, that's funny.
That's the way it goes.
So if people want to check out the videos, how do they get the video? Where do they find it? That kind of stuff.
The best place to go is chriscrawfordknives.com and just scroll through his video section. You can buy it as a DVD, or you can get it as streaming, or, he's got it all set up over there.
Oh, wow.
Sometimes I keep a few copies on hand. I'll try to take a few copies to like the Blade show and, that, but
yeah.
Normally I just try to direct people over to Chris's website. Okay.
And if you want the Sean Kendrick extra spicy version, is like pay-per-view or?
Yeah. It's $59.95 and
head over to Luke's OnlyFans.
OnlyFans. Yeah. There you go.
Hey, if you see me on there, I needed the money. Mind your own business.
Hey, I don't judge, baby. But now, in all seriousness, I have both the DVDs, and they are excellent. Even if you don't intend to make a knife and you just want to find out more, it is well worth your time.
Well, thank you. Sean, you're a good man. Not like that guy, Billy Cho.
Your check better fucking clear.
Don't worry.
Too funny. Nothing like a paid endorsement, which is the only kind there is, said Sean.
That's right.
Damn straight.
Too funny. Too funny. All right. Well, Luke, we appreciate you taking the time to chat with us, buddy. It's been a very interesting conversation. We appreciate it.
Hey guys, man, I appreciate you having me on, man.
Our pleasure, bud.
Thank you.
All right. So a couple other things. So we just did this fantasy knives, right? What was it called? Dr. Birch's Cabinet of Curiosities, the fantasy knives episode, and that was really fun to do. Really fun episode to do the research for. And we asked everybody to chime in, and we got a bunch of people. Sean, you want to talk a little bit about that? I was really pleased to see people show up in the group.
Yeah, it seems like we got a lot of fantasy heads who listen to the show.
Yes.
Because, we get good participation in the Facebook group, but not like we've seen this past week. It's just been an outpouring of really cool, really out there knives, and just a lot of really quality information that we probably wouldn't have come by otherwise.
Yeah.
For sure.
And thank you guys for participating the way you have. It's been a real joy. It has entertained the hell out of me.
Yeah, it's been really cool. The people did exactly what we asked, right? Tell us what your picks are for these categories. And a bunch of people did that. It's really, I don't know. It's part of the fun of this whole thing, right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
All right. And another cool thing, I'm going to mention this, Tom. So the clock is running on you finding a copy of this book. We mentioned we mentioned in the Fantasy Knives episode about Lee Lerman's Knife Books group. And I think it was Bruce Bump, wasn't it, Michael, that posted that Blades and Barrels?
Yeah, the very awesome edition with the presentation box and everything.
Oh, see, now you said that because I didn't get one of those.
Oh yeah, no, that's exactly why I said that.
Mother scratcher. Okay, so this is like a cut and shoot book basically, and I gave an example of one of these in the Fantasy Knives episode, but these are combination weapons basically, and it's called Blades and Barrels, and I don't remember when this book came out. It's an older book. There was a limited number of them printed, I think, and Bruce Bump posted it and said, "Hey, this is a real cool book that a friend of mine gave me," and so I'm like, oh man, that does look cool. I got to go find a copy of that. So I went digging around and came up with one. And there's some fascinating stuff back there, and people making some very complicated weapons a long ass time ago.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
With very little technology by modern standards, So it's pretty fascinating to see some of the stuff that's in there.
Oh man, the double pistol Qatar you showed us a picture of was something else. I mean,
Fucking rock and roll.
Yes.
yeah.
I mean, it's like a rock and roll weapon in the first place, and then by the way, it has 2 guns hooked to it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll have to snap a couple of cool pictures and out of that book and share them in our group, because there's some really, really fun stuff in there. And the way the book is laid out is really cool. So it's a good reference book. And if you hear this, and you should jack the price up, because that means it'll cost Tom a lot of money to get his copy.
I just bought one. So right now. Listen,
Right now, I just clicked on it.
Hear that? That's me buying the book right there.
That's the sound of the USPS get my book in the mail.
Yeah.
It sounded kind of like a fuck you.
That it did. And then another cool thing that came out of the recent conversation in the group, I think this was one of Tom's picks in the Fantasy Knives episode, was he talked about a knife called the Funny Folder. And that was, who made that one, Tom, that you talked about?
Well, I was aware of TM Dow, but they're saying it was earlier than that.
Yeah.
Bird was mentioning.
Bird gave us some real cool history in the group on that design and different people that have made it over the years, and some cool pictures. No surprise, right? Bird's always got some cool rabbit hole of information about stuff.
Inside track.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
He might be the knife nerd's knife nerd.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
And so there's a gentleman that's in the group. I'm going to get his name wrong probably. I think it's pronounced Jack Conan or Conan, Connan. Jack is a knife maker who's in the group. I think he's maybe from Australia or somewhere. Jack posted a picture of a custom version that he made that actually has locking operation where it locks open and locks closed. So it, instead of just having the mechanical swing aspect of this thing, it actually has locks on both positions.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Gorgeous execution on the ones I saw.
Yeah.
Pictures of. I mean, aside from the cool mechanism and all the thought that went into that, just exceptional knife work.
Yeah. Really cool evolution of that design, I think. And really, really pretty examples. I went over on his Facebook page, and he's got a couple of real cool ones that are maybe slightly simpler, but, like with mammoth ivory, or, you know what I mean? Just real pretty handles, and I don't know, really cool knives. So I got to work on trick and jacking and making one for me. So we'll see how that goes. And I don't know. I think that's it. Do you guys have any cool stuff that you saw recently that you want to remark about or point folks at?
No, not really.
Saw the American Tomahawk Company Trench Club. That was pretty cool.
Yeah,
Is that
cool.
Is that who made that? The American Tomahawk Company? It's under that brand?
Yeah, I think it's under the ATC banner, I believe.
Okay. For people that haven't seen that, Sean, it's pretty badass. Explain what that is exactly.
Man, it's a study in man's hatred for mankind. It is a handle with basically a large gear on the end that you can use to cave somebody's head in or bash their ribs or just generally fuck up their day. It dates back to World War I, when trench warfare really started, and dudes would jump into the trenches with a club. And it's fairly close to some, battlefield-made ones I've seen.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah. It's not the only one I've seen that basically has a big gear on the end of it.
I was going to say, the look of it suggests a history, right?
Yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah. So a really, really gnarly looking club. It is a very cool thing. We'll have to post a picture in the group of that thing, because Pretty awesome. What were you going to say, Tom? You saw something cool as well?
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to Jason Knight, Night Forge Studio. He's doing something pretty cool. They're doing an online course, and so I've bought the first series. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet, but looking forward to it. And like for chapter 2, he's got like Steve Schwartz coming. Really cool. I mean, if you're, for me, I find it interesting, even though I don't forge. It's a part of the craft that I find interesting, and watching a master do what they do is always really cool. So,
yeah,
I think it's pretty neat what they're doing. Really nice quality.
Yeah, we need to get Jason on the show. It'd be cool to hear him talk a little bit about that project and what's going on. It's tutorial kind of stuff, I gather, at least from the videos that I saw.
Yeah. And really like high quality done too. So I always think that's cool.
Yeah.
I want to throw out another one. I saw where Claudio Sobral is working on a trench knife.
Oh.
Yeah, and it's as stunning as one would think. It's a massive piece.
Wow.
Yeah.
I look forward to that.
Yeah, me too.
I'll have to go find pictures. He has it on his Instagram?
I believe so. I've seen it. I know I've seen it on Facebook, and I'm pretty sure I've seen it on the IG.
I groaned because it's got to be fabulous. You know, it's going to be crazy.
Oh, dude, it is. I mean, it's just a study in excess.
Yeah. He didn't do anything that isn't crazy. I mean, he does, but most of it's insane.
Dude, I mean, even his stuff that sedate's pretty crazy as far as detail and fit and finish go.
Yeah. Yeah, that one that Brian Efro sent me is like a ultra simple cast knife, and it's fucking awesome.
Sean, I just pulled up Instagram. Are you talking about the knuckle duster compound ground Bowie thing?
Mm-hmm.
Dude, that's pretty crazy even for one of theirs. It's pretty sick.
Yeah.
Would it have fit in our Fantasy Knives episode?
100%.
Quite easily.
We made about everything fit in there.
Yeah, no, we broadened the definition of that category for sure. Luke, you got anything cool that you saw recently, or somebody that you saw do something good that you want to point out?
I saw Rupel built a 6-blade sow belly.
Oh, I saw that too. He just
I
posted
saw that
pictures
right
of it
before
today.
we started recording.
Told me one time, if you can make a 3-blade, you can make a 5-blade. It's just an extra liner and a couple more blades. Yeah, sure. I expect that 6-blade was about like that.
Yeah. It should be.
I love looking at all that stuff. I basically follow whoever you guys say to follow on Instagram, and I was looking at that trench knife, got hypnotized a little bit.
Easy to do, man. It'll suck you in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yes. So should we assume that you don't have plans to make a 6-blade sow belly anytime soon?
On the contrary, I'm not smart enough to not do it.
Now we're talking.
Yeah. I have one on the bench. I just haven't been telling anybody.
Not until now.
I'm not sure I can. I mean, it still remains to be seen whether or not I can actually get it to work. So I don't know. We'll see.
Well, like we always say, nobody actually listens to this show. So if you don't, no one will know the difference anyways.
You have like 5 chances for it to be a single-bladed knife.
Yeah.
Man, I tell you what, 5 single blades pays a lot more than 1 5-blade.
That's true.
I'm sure so.
That's true. Yeah, Michael's thinking you just chucking liners and blades as you go. Okay, you just kind of whittle around back.
Nah, just leave holes for them. Be like, those are placeholders.
Right. Too funny. Yeah. All right. Well, fellas, it's been a very fun discussion. I really appreciate, again, Luke taking the time to chat with us. And
yeah.
Man, I enjoyed it. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Appreciate you making time for us.
Hope I won't cause you to lose too many viewers. Yeah. Yeah, my schedule is so convoluted these days.
Yeah. Friggin' retired guys.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. We appreciate your time. Thanks everybody for listening. As always, we have a bunch of Patreon people that support us. We actually got a few new ones recently. So we appreciate all you folks, and thanks for helping support the show and keeping us going. And we really appreciate that. It's we continue to try to make the show better at every episode, and hopefully we're doing that. And we have the Patreon people to thank for some of that because they help make some of that happen. So
very much so.
Yeah. Well, that's it. Thanks everybody for listening. We'll talk to you next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, folks. Rest in peace, Eddie Van Halen.
To learn more about our makers, you can find Tom Crine on the web at crineknives.net, in his Facebook group, Crine Knives, or in his Instagram account, @CrineKnives. For Michael Birch, check birchtreeblades.com, Facebook group Birch Tree Blade Works, or Michael's Instagram @BirchTreeBlades. For myself and the Raygun Bead Project, we're on the web at raygundivision.com. We have a Facebook group called Raygun Division, or my personal Instagram @msteiner. For those interested in photos, references from the show, or some discussion about the show itself, you can find us on the web at markofthemaker.com, in a Facebook group called Mark of the Maker, or on our Instagram @markofthemaker. Last but not least, the ultra cool and haunting background music we use for the show is a piece called Noir Guitar by Stevie's Amp Shack, found at the Free Music Archive and licensed under Creative Commons CC BY 4.0. Thanks for listening.